welcome back to the channel. It has been a while since I have made a full-length video, and we're going to talk about why. I recently got fired from my job. We are calling it a win because I decided to quiet or soft quit way back last Christmas. And ever since last Christmas, I was engaging in some what might otherwise be considered illegal direct action against Target. But like I said, last Christmas, I know that post-election, a lot of people have reached the point where they are simply saying, I'm done trying to do this the nice, quote-unquote, legal way. I'm sorry, this is really annoying. I do not frame my canvases, so it's very easy for them to get crooked if somebody knocks the wall or whatever. Anyway, I decided that since I did not value the job or the company anymore, what I was gonna do was put in some effort into making it a little easier for people to pick up 5-finger discounts, if you know what I mean. So if you need baby formula or razors or shampoo, I am the perfect person for you to come to if you need help learning how to get away with the 5-finger discount. So I feel a lot lighter because I am done with the job. They caught me, and then decided not to prosecute, which, okay, whatever. That's a good thing, but it's also a curious and kind of concerning thing, because I'm worried that it will turn legal, given the incoming administration, and the fact that Target's union busting is why I decided to do the research so that I could help people take what they need from these companies that would rather lock up the baby formula behind a case than pay their workers fairly so that they can afford the formula. So even though, yeah, it sucks beyond the telling of it, my cat almost fell out of the cat tree. He is not the most graceful. But even though I am very, very stressed out about finding a job, I now have the time to create the content that will bring me the community that I would need to support myself while I look for a job. So I'm trying to look at it as a good thing, right? Like, the things that this company put me through, and what was ultimately my breaking point was when I was threatened with violence and then had things thrown at me on the line in the warehouse while we were unloading the truck. And because Target didn't want to get into a tussle with a brown man over racism, not only did I still have to work with him for 2 months after the violent threats he made to me, it took him threatening a team lead who is a man for them to do shit all about it. So you know what? If the worst thing that can happen to you as a company is somebody asking you to take accountability for the fact that you don't run background checks, you don't do drug tests, like, as a weed consumer, I feel like it's valid for me to say, you don't get to have a leg up on people who choose to 5-finger discount from your fucking stores. Like, and that's on top of the union busting, closing down 4 Seattle area stores before they would allow union organizing, right? Like, they were on the precipice. They were bringing their petition to the NLRB for the review. And all 4 stores were shut down completely. They weren't even turned into fulfillment centers, which is logically what would make sense if you're trying to claim that theft is the reason why your stores are failing. Okay, well, make it so that they're fulfillment only, right? They're like Amazon warehouses where you have to work there to get in, right? They would rather spy on employees in employee-only areas than use those resources to keep the store safe. Like, they asked me in my exit interview, right? Well, exit interview. They asked me, what do you think asset protection is for? And I said, to protect the asset, to protect the merchandise. And he was like, you don't think we're here to protect the employees? And I flat out said, no, you're not here to protect the employees. You're here to protect the assets, the merchandise, right? Like, you don't see employees as assets. You see them all as liabilities. Period. Period. That is the only valid explanation for why there is more cameras in employee-only areas and why they're using covert cameras. Okay, I can't believe that anybody who is decent at their job in any capacity would ever tell this to somebody who could potentially use it against the company. But they spy on employees' social media and phone usage with covert cameras. They put them in the buttons of the shirts they put on mannequins. They put them in the plastic. So when we get our when Target gets the hangers in, right? They have these little plastic things that they slide over that can change out, so you can change out the sizes. They put covert cameras in those plastic hanger things, and then they will leave them in the abandoned area where you bring style abandoned that you've had on the floor that you bring back to be sorted and then taken back to the floor, right? Like, they had a covert camera in. I once asked, flat out, I said, why is it okay for people to take these toys and put them up here, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense that we're not allowed to decorate our registers or bring anything to our registers, but here at guest service, there's little toys all over there, you know, and fuck if they didn't admit that they put covert cameras to spy on people at guest services, because there's no cameras in the guest service registers like there is at the cash lane, right? There's a camera in the scanner at the cash lane, right? There's not similar cameras at guest service. Like, there's the big dome camera, right? But everybody knows that camera, right? We're talking about where they put covert cameras. The fact that it is more important to them to spy on their employees, like, even though I don't have a job anymore, it was worth it. It was worth it for the information that I now have that I can teach other people, because this company does not deserve to be taken seriously, right? With the number of fucking wine moms and trad wives that fucking think that Target is the be-all end-all of shopping, they don't deserve to be treated like anything other than a looting warehouse. Like, I will stand behind that 100%, even if it ends in me in jail. Because I'm sick of playing both ends and acting like Target is a company worth working for and, you know, worth not shit talk. Like, I don't care. If my future employers aren't gonna hire me because I shit talk my past or former employer, that's fine. I don't want to work for somebody who is gonna dick suck a corporate mega giant like Target. Right? Like, I should be able to say, I was treated poorly at this job that dedicates itself to being anti-worker without worrying whether or not I will still be able to find a job. That just, it's ridiculous. But now that that's all happened and it's all out, right? I feel like I wish I could explain the way that the block feels when you have brain fog and are expected to still come and perform on camera. Like, if you look back at some of my early videos, like one video that I did when I had come home from getting hit multiple times by the same server at work. I was the one who was disciplined, not the server who hit me. Literally, fist to skin, hit me. And again, the man who metes out the violence is not the one who gets in trouble. The femme or woman who responds to that is the one who gets in trouble. Always. Always. It doesn't matter who you work for. Always. But it's like a feeling of having your head full of sand. And like, that's how I've been feeling about when I've, you know, tried to sit down and write or read since the election. It just feels like congestion, pain that I cannot handle, that I do not want to handle. And so my content suffered, and I have, you know, I have to, and every time I have to rebuild, because my content suffered, I have to rebuild from the ground up. So I'm really hoping that this will be my opportunity to really curate my following and find the people who are like-minded. You don't have to be a communist to follow me or, you know, to read the same books I read. However, you should be aware of the fact that I am of the opinion that communism is the only way out of capitalism and fascism that will benefit the most people, all the most marginalized people. You don't have to believe that to follow me, as long as you believe in the inherent right of the working class to self-determination, right? Like, that's essentially the long and short of what guides most communist ideology, is not necessarily a thorough understanding of Marxist theory, right? Like, I barely skimmed through the Communist Manifesto. I have never read Capital, right? Like, I listened to maybe 15 minutes of Black Shirts versus Reds by Michael Parenti before I was falling asleep. You don't need to know all of that stuff to know that the workers being in charge of their own workplace and, you know, being able to self-determine, like, that doesn't take knowledge of theory. It doesn't take massive amounts of brain power or understanding to understand that that's a good thing, right? Is the workers owning the means of production and putting an end to capitalism and capitalist greed. So while my content is focused on, you know, reading from a leftist slash communist perspective. I don't like that leftist has become a catch-all for anybody left of center. I believe that we should own our individual politics. That's why I call myself a communist. I've never self-identified as a leftist. I've always self-identified by my political affiliation, which is communist now. What I'm hoping to accomplish. So I already have a blog written about how I think reading can be revolutionary even when you're not reading books that are explicitly political. Romance, right? You might not think romance, especially fantasy romance, you might not think that that's very political. It's not revolutionary. There's no rebellious spirit in reading romance, especially if you're a typical girly girl, AFAB, femme type person. In my blog, I talk about The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. If you are new here, that is one of my favorite books of all time. It altered my brain chemistry in the best way. But I talk about how even though the story is kind of not really, it's not deep, it's not, like, I felt intense emotions, but that's because I related to the character. It's not because, the politics were something to sniff at, right? But in my blog, I talk about the ways in which that book and the themes can be seen from a political perspective. And the Schwab is a queer woman in America, so it's likely that she intended for there to be political undertones that you have to kind of look for. But even if she didn't intend to, it can still be used to inform your personal politics, right? Like the desire to be your own person at any cost, right? I'm sure anybody who is AFAB or femme in America, anywhere in the world, really can understand how that feels. And can understand how the erasure of feminine independence is partially what leads to the oppression of women. Making efforts to erase the feminine contribution to history, essentially. So that is the blog that I wrote, and my intention for the videos that I talk about, or that I'm going to be starting to put out, is to sort of talk about, okay, so we've decided that reading is political, now what? One of the things that I see being talked about on Threads is the idea that people are saying, well, ACOTAR and Fourth Wing are political high fantasy, and you read those, right, to the girlies who voted for Trump. I want to talk about how in every single negative review of the Artifacts of Oranos series by Nisha J. Tooley, who is an Indian American whose books are all of her books, including her fantasy and her romance, are all informed by Indian culture and her relationship to Indian culture as a woman. She is also pro-Palestine. She is a leftist politically. I'm sorry she's not Indian American, she's Canadian. But the point being, she is pretty much antithetical to everything that everyone says they don't like about Sarah J. Maas. But everyone always says, well, I don't like ACOTAR, don't talk about ACOTAR, without saying or without mentioning the Artifacts of Uranus. Or they say, well, Fourth Wing and ACOTAR are political fantasy, you should be reading those, or if you read those, then you are political. And it's like, no, literally no. Just because the books themselves are political, like somebody pointed out, there's still massive amounts of racism and ableism in both series. And we all know Sarah J. Maas's history of using the Black community for clout. So it is wild to me that people would negatively review ACOTAR, would negatively review any of the books in the Artifacts of Uranus series by saying, oh, it's too similar to ACOTAR. But then when the conversation comes up, people are promoting ACOTAR as political fantasy instead of recommending political fantasy that is exactly like ACOTAR but is actually political and is actually informed by the lived experiences of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. Like, really just blows my mind how people will say, oh, read ACOTAR, read Fourth Wing, when this... I'm sorry, I am extremely triggered by Nisha J. Tooley erasure. Because why? Why is anybody still negatively reviewing her books and talking positively about books that are written by people who don't know what they're talking about and who are actually quite racist, despite the political nature of their books? Like, things can be political and still be racist and problematic. And that is the whole point about this whole ACOTAR being, political fantasy. Like, okay. And it takes every ounce of self-control that I have not to pop in every time somebody's reading ACOTAR, it's mostly every time somebody negatively reviews, especially if they negatively review Trial of the Sun Queen. Because that book specifically is meant to make you think that the story is going one place. It's meant to make you think that the story is going this way, and then flips it around between the end of Trial of the Sun Queen and the beginning of Fate of the Sun King. No, wait, what was it? No, the second book is Rule of the Aurora King. I can't freaking keep these straight. Every single fantasy author that I follow released multiple books in 2024. Like, give me a break, ladies. Give me a break. I can't keep up. I can't keep track. I want to properly represent your books. And that doesn't... Between the end of Trial of the Sun Queen and the beginning of Rule of the Aurora King is where you really start to understand, okay, wow, this is not just about the public side of political intrigue, right? It's not just the public side of, like the Trial of the Sun Queen, right? Was the public side of how are we going to go about dismantling oppression, right? Like, she purposefully is put, lore is purposefully put into the Sun Queen trials because of her position politically as the possible primary, right, of heart, right? You've got the Aurora King and the Sun King, and then the Wood King, I think, and then there's the Heart Queen, and you find out that it's about the politics, right? It's not a fluffy romance that is, that bears quite a striking resemblance to a high fantasy version of The Bachelor. It is extremely political. And the dynamics between the different fae in this world, very, like, it's obvious to me, because I'm not a fucking racist, that the political dynamics are meant to mimic how the caste system works in Indian society or culture, right? Like, and that's another reason why I just boo heartily at the people who give Trial of the Sun Queen negative reviews, because it wasn't as deep as they thought it was gonna be. Like, it's not supposed to be. That was the point of the first book, is to kind of set up the idea that power doesn't have a look. It doesn't have a caste, so to speak, right? Because Lore came from poverty. She was imprisoned as a child. And it really is just oh my goodness. I lost my train of thought. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. Hopefully we'll be able to fix it in editing, or hopefully I'll get my train of thought back. But it's supposed to be, right, sort of a testament to power coming in all shapes and forms, right? Just because Lore is supposedly not as powerful, and just because this Trial of the Sun Queen bachelor, bachelorette type story is how it starts, like, it's just maddening when people negatively review that, but will read ACOTAR. Like, ACOTAR has not been, not ACOTAR, I'm sorry, it's the Throne of Glass series, that it has been broken down. It is explicitly plagiarized from A Song of Ice and Fire. I will not take any criticism on that opinion. I will not take notes. Okay? There are several creators on TikTok and Instagram who have broken down both series in detail, determining that straight down to the initials of the series, it's been plagiarized. So, like, even if Sarah J. Maas was not a racist, Zionist asshole, why are we still not recognizing Nisha J. Tooley every time political fucking fantasy comes up? She's not even the fucking smuttiest fantasy romance author that I consume. But I've seen at least a dozen people mention Katie Robert as political. Y'all recognize Dark Olympus as being better political fantasy than ACOTAR, but I love Katie, I do. But you are still promoting a white person, albeit a white trans person. Still, you are promoting a white person over acknowledging the numerous stories written by authors of color that are like, people have said, who have read ACOTAR, have said, this is exactly like ACOTAR. Okay, so why? Tell me why. You've got a comment section. Why? Why are you saying this is too much like ACOTAR instead of saying ACOTAR is a whitewashed version of fantasy and I prefer this version, even though they're similar? Like, the attachment y'all have to defending ACOTAR over anything else is wild to me. I just checked the time. I realized I've been ranting about Sarah J. Maas for a very long time, and my roommate is due to be home soon. I gotta get my laundry done. My gut is not happy. I wasn't gonna do this at the end of this video, but my tummy and my body is just breaking down completely without a job and without access to funds to be able to get my own groceries. So if you want to head to my Ko-fi, make a donation, join one of my paid tiers, because I will be producing more content while I am job hunting. I would very much appreciate, and if you could share the link to my Ko-fi with anybody that you think is interested in looking at the books we read from a political and revolutionary perspective, please share with them. Even sharing and helping boost my engagement helps immensely, since I just, it's really been hard for me to maintain that on my own, so I would appreciate it. If you are not currently subscribed to the channel here, also go ahead and do that. And I'm gonna try to get into a schedule: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday filming, Thursday, Friday editing, with a Saturday post date, Saturday, Sunday post date. But until I get that sort of under control, that habit going, ring that notification bell so you always know when there's new content. What am I currently reading? Oh, I am currently reading Influencer by Adam Cesar. This man knows horror. There's a reason why Clive Barker blurbed on all 3 books in the Clown in a Cornfield series. Adam Cesar is one of my generation's icons, essentially. I cannot wait to see more from this man. He is an incredible author. I am also currently reading Obsidian Feathers by the Latine author, and Caceres. Wow. Talk about a book that doesn't seem like it would be political, that is intriguing and fantastical and super, super spicy. Like, I cannot recommend that book enough for people who like Latine literature, people who like super spicy dark romance. If you like stories about, indigenous Mexican culture, I cannot recommend that book and that author enough. I bought both. She had Obsidian Feathers on a Stuff Your Kindle event, and then the Salt Road was available for, I think, like $2.99 if you got Obsidian Feathers from the event. And of course I immediately downloaded it, immediately paid for it. And I suggest that if you are into the same kind of books that I am, that you do the same. One of the things that my blog talks about is how, even though reading dark romance doesn't seem like it would be a political act, openly continuing to consume books that are about to be banned is probably the most revolutionary thing we can do as readers these days. So I am going to go enjoy a little spicy time with the books I'm reading. I hope y'all are having a good week, had a happy Monday, and also have some happy reading.